Hey, it's that time again. Time for another episode of Shelve It or Shove It, the completely superficial way to pick books for your TBR based solely on their covers. I am your host, Daisy X Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I'll be looking at Goodreads new releases for the month of November to add one book to my TBR for December. And we'll be looking in the categories of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Starting with science fiction, and first up is The Relentless Legion by J.S. Dews. The tagline is, to save humanity, they'll have to tear it down. And there's a blurb from a review, one of the most stunning sci-fi debut of a recent year, and it says a novel of the divide. So that kind of makes me think it's a series. We have a picture of a spaceship that looks like it's being blown apart or dematerialized somehow, breaking apart into little dust components. I don't know. I think it's kind of generic. I'm hoping it's like The Expanse, which, as you know, is one of my favorite sci-fi series. But I don't know. This cover it's making me ask some questions, but I'm just not very excited about it because it is reminding me a lot of The Expanse. And I don't want to read something too derivative. And this seems to be a series. So for those reasons, I think I'll have to shove it. Next up is Revenant X, Endless Dark, Endless Terrors. Tagline by David Wellington. I don't know who that is. And it could be Revenant 10 for the Roman numeral 10. And there is a sort of futuristic spacesuit, and there is a planet or something behind it. Endless Dark, Endless Terror, horror, science fiction, maybe. And I'm not quite certain, but I think there is a crack in the viewer portion of the helmet. Again, it's striking me a little bit generic, although I like this cover more than the last cover. I'm still not excited by it. I'm going to have to shove it. Next up in science fiction is And the Mighty Will Fall by K.B. Wagers. It says it's a Neog novel, so I'm guessing it's part of a series. There's a recommendation by Max Gladstone. I am not excited about this cover either. Although I kind of like what they're doing with the font, all the lowercase letters, and how mighty it's big, and fall is bigger than will. I mean, I like what they're doing with the font. That's really not enough to make me pick up a book. And I believe it's a series. I called it Neog, but I think it's Neo-G. I think the cover is generic. I don't know what it could be about. Space opera of some sort, I assume. But yeah, I'm going to have to shove it. Next up is Breath of Oblivion by Maurice Broaddus. And I like this cover more than the others because I just like the illustration better. I like these buildings and the spaceship. This is planet side, but we see these ships in the sky. It looks like some type of invasion, or maybe they're gearing up for war. It's some futuristic setting, so I'm thinking space opera. And as much as I like the artwork, I'm not getting enough to pick it just by the cover. Although it's a gorgeous picture. But it's a little too generic for me, so I'm going to have to shove it. And finally, in science fiction is Interstellar, Mega Chef, I'm going to screw up this name, Lavanya Lakshminarayan. This is a crazy cover. There's a big donut with pink frosting and sprinkles floating in space, and there's these other little objects around it, including broccoli and a satellite and a mushroom and a tomato. So Mega Chef. So I'm assuming this is some futuristic chef, and because of the context of the cover, I'm assuming this is going to be a humorous comedy satire type novel, which is exciting. And I love a cover that makes me laugh. This cover makes me laugh. So you got me. I'm going to have to shelve it. And now we move on to fantasy. And first up is The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Long. And I love this cover. I hope we see more of this type of cover. I like these illustrated covers that are very vibrant. This one shows a wagon. There's a woman sitting on it with a cat, and I love cats. And I like the colors. Everything is very vibrant. Since it says The Teller of Small Fortunes, I'm wondering if this is a smaller type story like a novella, although it says a novel. I don't trust that for publishers, but gorgeous cover. Love it. I want to shelve it. Next up is The Lotus Empire by Tasha Suri. Name is familiar, probably because it says it was the winner of the World Fantasy Award for The Jasmine Throne. And I'm wondering if this is a sequel to The Jasmine Throne. And there's a recommendation by S.A. Chakraborty, who I like that author quite a bit. And I like the illustration. It's very vibrant. There's fires going on. These two women are lighting up this lotus garden, maybe? I don't know. But I'm pretty sure this is a sequel, and I don't want to jump into a sequel right now, so I'm going to have to shove it. But I am interested in The Jasmine Throne, so if you've read it, let me know about it down in the comments. Now we move on to The Improvisers by Nicole Glover. And there's this single jet airplane, and it says a murder and magic novel. Now, I'm wondering if this is a series, a murder and magic series, and this is one of the novels. But when they say it like that, I'm thinking it could be a fantasy / cozy mystery, where even though it's part of a bunch of different novels, that each novel is a standalone mystery, like The Midsolar Murders by Lafferty, that I like quite a lot. And I kind of like this cover. There's this, I guess, female aviator. It looks kind of retro, maybe historical fiction, maybe. And some type of starscape around this person, and murder and magic, I'm going to think cozy fantasy mystery. So all those are clicking so many boxes, I'm going to have to shelve it. Next up in fantasy is The Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Caruso. And we have, I guess, a pendulum, and there's a astrological mandala, there's a clock, and there's a woman with a sword, I think. And I'm curious what it's about, but I can't imagine picking this just by this cover, because all the images are so disparate. I'm not quite sure how they link together. except I'm thinking time travel and portal fantasy between worlds. I don't know. Too many questions. I'm going to have to shove it. And finally, in fantasy, we have We Shall Be Monsters by Alyssa Wees. And this is not my favorite type of cover with the title in the center and sort of things around it. The things around it, I like the illustration. There is a mirror. There's these bird skulls. Of these types of covers, this is beautifully done. But I'm not going to pick it based on this cover, so I'm going to have to shove it. Now we move on to horror. Ooh. And first up is Two-Step Devil by Jamie Quattro, author of Fire Sermon. Don't know this author, don't know that book. There's a recommendation by Lauren Groff, who I don't know. And it's a sort of sketch of a goat with these red horns drawn on. So I'm thinking very traditional occult devil type worshipping twist. Not that interested. And the cover's kind of bland. It's not really drawing me in. So I'm going to have to shove it. Next up is Sweetest Darkness by Leslie Lutz. And by the way, Goodreads does horror a little bit differently, and they mix everything together that's tagged horror in new release horror. And I just try to pick 5 books that are together at the time of filming, and they often mix up young adult with even middle grade. So I think this might be young adult by the character in the center, and there's these constellations behind him and a house, or maybe it's a school, sort of a haunted school, haunted house type situation. I'm not interested. I'm going to have to shove it. Next up in horror is Evil in Me by Brom, single named author, USA Today best-selling author. I don't know who this person is. I love this artwork though. Absolutely love it. It looks like an album cover, sort of a retro album cover, which I'm sure is intentional. And there's this green woman playing a guitar. There's these mouths around it. It's giving me very retro 70s, 80s. Looks like there's this devil skull behind her. Evil in Me. Maybe it's a novel about possession of some sort. Oh, and I even like these purple lines going around it. I love this art. Gorgeous. So I'm going to shelve it. Next up is Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Horvath Osman Elhau. I'm messing that name up. Okay, at first glance, this looks like a children's book, and I was like, what is going on here? But it's this little cute bear. We're in an aerial view, and has a shovel, and he's carrying behind him a sack that has blood on it, and he's leaving a trail of blood. This is so humorous. This has to be some type of satirical horror comedy children's riff, maybe a riff on Winnie the Pooh, about a psychotic little bear, maybe. I kind of love this. I mean, it's definitely telling me a story. It's telling me there's going to be some sort of children's character or whimsical veneer to the story, and underneath that it's going to be very bloody and cruel and maybe funny. I got to shelve it. And finally in horror, and our last book, Guillotine by Delilah S. Dawson. She's a New York Times bestselling author. Seems like they all are now. And there's a recommendation by Josh Mallerman, who I don't know. It's a rose. It looks like it's splattered with blood, and there's pearls around it. I don't know what type of horror this is. Guillotine, is it actually historical fiction about a guillotine? And I don't know. You know, I like my horror supernatural rather than a slasher story, and I'm wondering if this is a slasher. Not getting it by the cover, so I'm going to have to shove it. Okay, well, this has been interesting. We shelved one science fiction, Interstellar Megashift by Lavanya Lakshmanira. And we shelved two fantasies, The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Long and Improvisers by Nicole Glover. And we also shelved two horrors, Evil in Me by Brahm and Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Horvath Otsmane Elihu. Forgive me for mispronouncing some of these names. And Golly Gee. We have a maybe satirical funny horror. We may have Teller of Small Fortunes. It's giving me kind of that cozy fantasy vibe. Improvisers, I'm thinking, is a cozy mystery / fantasy. But I think all these covers in science fiction and fantasy are nothing compared to the two horrors. Because Evil in Me has one of the most striking pieces of artwork I've seen on a cover in a long time. I love it so much. And Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees is giving me a story, this whimsical little psychotic bear. It's got to be Brahm. This novel by Brahm, Evil in Me, with the sort of psychedelic album cover. I just keep looking at it. It is so cool looking. I wonder what I've gotten myself into. I'm a little bit concerned that there's this author who goes by one name, kind of like Cher or Madonna. And, but it could be fine. Let's go ahead and read the blurb. Evil in Me is best-selling author Brahm's novel of possession, damnation, and rock and roll, where one woman must get the world singing in order to save her soul. The devilish tale includes nearly 24 of Brahm's immersive paintings and brilliant end papers. Oh my gosh, the artist's name is Brahm. That kind of makes more sense to me, having sort of that single word name for an artist as opposed to an author, although we have authors like Avi. But, okay, I'm into the artwork. Aspiring musician Ruby Tucker has had enough of her small rural town and dysfunctional family, but a falling out with her best friend and bandmate has killed her dreams of escaping and making it big in the Atlanta punk scene. While helping her eccentric neighbor organize his religious relics, an ancient ring clamps down on her finger, possessing her with the spirit of a bloodthirsty demon. There's no getting it off unless hundreds of people chant a spell to set Ruby free. And what's worse, the ring is a beacon for evil, drawing in unimaginably wicked mob straight to Ruby, hungry for her flesh. If Ruby can get her band back together, she has a shot at salvation. It's time for her to face the music and put her whole soul into a song, one powerful enough to raise some hell. Okay, as suspected, the cover looking like an album is going with the story of a musician-songwriter, and she has a magic ring that possesses her with a bloodthirsty devil, and she has to get a whole bunch of people to sing a song, good thing she's a musician, to remove the curse. And I'm hoping that she got the ring because she is a musician. Otherwise, that's a little bit convenient. A little bit, shall we say, Deus Ex Machina. I'm curious about this. I'm interested in reading this new author, Brahm, who was a USA Today best-selling author, and I'm really curious to see the artwork that's in this book, which I may end up buying a physical copy because artwork in Kindle has something to be desired. So I may actually get the physical copy of this book. Maybe I'll even get the library copy if there is one. I don't know. But I want to know what you think. What books would you have picked based solely on their covers? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.